meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Here.
Commissioner Szymanski,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas,
Here.
Commissioner Weiner,
Here.
Commissioner McBride,
Here.
Commissioner Yoder, Chair Whitliff.
Here. Thank you. Approval of agenda. At this time, the Planning Commission may approve the August 1st, 2019 agenda.
I'll motion to approve it.
Motion by Bob, second by Shelley. Any discussion? None. Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Szymanski,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner,
Yes.
Commissioner McBride,
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder,
Yes.
Chair Whitliff.
Yes. Thank you. Approval of minutes. At this time, the Planning Commission may approve the July 19th, 2000 meeting minutes. Is there a motion? By Marlene, second by Roger. Discussion? None. Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Szymanski,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner,
Yes.
Commissioner McBride,
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder,
Yes.
Chair Whitliff.
Yes. Thank you. Next, public hearing, 168 Harrison Street, vacation request. I'd like to invite Joe Hollander to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Joe Hollander. I'm no longer president. I'm an authorized agent of Hollander Development Corporation. My son Matthew took over last year. It's a little tough to get rid of that title, but anyway, I'm here on behalf of the party that's requesting this vacation. Hollander Development has control of the site, and we are the ones who are requesting that the portion of the site, the streets be vacated. The reason I asked to speak first is because I wanted to let those who live in the immediate neighborhood know that I have talked to some of you. I heard your concerns, and I agree that there needs to be a secondary means of access to Van Buren Street. All right? And so earlier today, I met with the zoning director, and I think he can show you. Just wait for the computer to catch up with.
There's seats up front here. 3 of them.
3 seats up front. We got 3 up front here. 3 adults. Children, no. Hold your child.
Very briefly, what you can see on your screens and what's up on the large screen, the red hatched area is the area that we're asking to be vacated, which would consist of the unpaved portion of Van Buren Street, and then also Jefferson south of Van Buren Street to Harrison. The secondary means of access would be a new street that we would build at our expense that would involve a right turn at the end of Van Buren Street and then head north to connect with Jackson. All right? So that addresses the concern for secondary access. The reason that we're asking for this configuration is that it will give us more space to develop the site if that is the direction that we wind up going. If we are unable to put that together, then any action by the Planning Commission or by the City Council would be rescinded. It's up to the property owner, Art Olson, that if we aren't able to proceed with the project and he wants to expand this, follow the same course that we're asking for, to come back on his own and ask for it. But he's approved what we're asking for tonight. think that's probably all I'll say right now. I think leave it up to the staff maybe to explain a little bit more if you would, and then answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so if you'd like me to explain the street vacation process, the Planning Commission would hear comments from the public at large here that are going to speak on that request. If they have comment, Planning Commission could either then table discussion, or you can have discussion now amongst yourselves and make a recommendation to City Council to either deny or to proceed with the street vacation request.
Is there any,
There is some correspondence that we have received, letters from concerned property owners that speak to the limiting of a single ingress and egress to that roadway, and having to obviously move out to 31 for all of their traffic movements from the road. So the addition of this roadway and the connection would provide a secondary access to those property owners.
there's only 4 property owners on Van Buren.
We received seven
I mean,
letters
in
of
2
correspondence.
businesses, I was just there last night. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but if they build,
This-
how many
this-
will be
No,
there?
you're gonna stop here
We
by
can-
Polka's and Smikles and head towards the highway. There's 5 houses
That is
and
true.
2 businesses.
Yep. But it would be our recommendation to hear from the public at large during the public hearing, and then we can read the correspondence that's been received into the record for you.
Exactly.
Okay?
Thank you. I just want to say that when the public, whoever addresses the commission, this is about the street vacation only. So please follow that.
Right.
So
right.
at that, if there's anyone that would like to say something about the street vacation, please come to the podium, state your name and address. You'll have 5 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Gary Smichael. I live at 163 Van Buren Street. They tried to close this street off in 1979. And they did a study by the city council and the traffic, and they stated at that time in paperwork that's in City Hall, and I have, that the traffic to exit Van Buren onto 31 was a lot of traffic on 31. It was safer to go onto Washington or down to Harrison. Now, in 40 years, the traffic hasn't gotten any better on 31. We need an exit off of Van Buren Street. We have one right now. It goes over to Jackson Street. So I don't want, and the people that live on our street and people that use our street don't want it to be a one-way street.
Dead end, you mean?
It's a dead end, yeah. You go up, you have to turn around. Well,
Right.
then we have snow removal problems. There's no place to put the snow when they go to Tommy's house and they block the road off. There's 5, 10 feet maybe past Tommy's house.
Yeah.
There's no place to put the snow. There's no fields or anything.
Yeah.
So the traffic surely hasn't gotten better to go to 31. 75 to 80% of my time, I go to Washington to go wherever I want to go because I can't get out on the highway. The other day I tried to go out, there was a boat going through, and at the same time the train was having trouble on the tracks. Well, when I did get to the highway, I sat there and it was 4 lanes of traffic and they were going 15 miles an hour and you couldn't see no end in it. I sat there for better than 10 minutes and you couldn't see no end. And our streets, all of them that pull up to the highway, you have to edge out into the traffic lane in order to see past the buildings, the posts, the trees, the stuff that's close to the road, and on the curves to see the cars coming. So it's a lot more dangerous to pull out on that highway than it is to go to the back road. I can get off the highway all right because it's wide open, I can see, but I can't when I'm trying to get on the highway. I have a hard time, and I know all my neighbors tell me the same thing. And And we get a fair amount of semi-traffic. Now, what are they gonna do with that stuff? Come up, how do you turn a semi around in the middle of the street? No place to go. I wanna see them have an exit for us. So we got a way out. Cause if they have an accident and they block off the highway, we can't go anywhere. We couldn't get to the hospital, we couldn't get to anywhere.
Helicopter here.
Yeah, fly, I'll spread my wings, Raj, and fly, you know? But what I'm saying is, in 1979, the city council approved the road to go through to Jackson Street because the traffic on the highway was so bad. It's in your archives on film. My neighbor got it copied, so it's right here. My mother was here in front of the city council about it then. And they said, we agree. We need an out. So that's why they made the road the way it is.
How come they never finished it?
They did finish it. The road was covered. The plows plowed all the tar off it about 4 years ago. And they've never touched it since then. They haven't graded it. There's no tar on it. It's all like a two-track.
I know, I was there
You have
last
1
night.
minute.
I use it.
Yeah, it was there last night.
I
see it.
use it all the time. It's like you go in the woods, it's like a two-track, so.
Right, right.
But we definitely need a way to get out safe for us and anybody else that happens to come on our street. Company, visitors, friends, family from out of town.
30 seconds.
Okay, I've said what I come here to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address.
Quentin McKinnon Copus, Executive Director, Contracting Officer, City of Manistee, Housing Commission, 273 6th Avenue, Manistee, Michigan. The City of Manistee Housing Commission has issued Hollander Development Corporation a notice of termination of negotiations. The CMHC has received a letter of protest from Hollander Development Corporation, and we are in the process of responding. The Housing Commission cannot make any comments on the item item from the Hollander Development Corporation before the commission tonight. That's the information the Housing Commission wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Judy Stocky, and I live at 169 Harrison Street, directly across from Olson Lumber. And I would like to know, before you vote tonight to vacate this and for this road, is why it's not being addressed of why they want to vacate that property. It seems like we're putting the cart before the horse here. It's kind of a backdoor deal. So I think it's important for the people of Manistee to know the reason they want to vacate this property is to put in 48 multifamily units into this parcel of land. And that is a problem. It's a problem for the north side. This proposal is discussing relocating Century Terrace, Vine Street, and Holly Court residents. Did you know that Central Dispatch responded to Century Terrace 258 times in 2018? This is what they're proposing to put into this vacated property. So I've lived there for 35 years, raised my family on this area. And if you look around the north side right now, people are renovating their homes. We have condominium projects going in. It's a quiet neighborhood. We've all raised our families here. Kids can go at will. Now we're going to be looking at increased traffic, decreased property values. And like Harrison Street, we're already dealing with the traffic that came from when Lincoln Street was cut off for left-hand turns on 31. So now we're going to be looking at even more traffic into this area. So I'm just concerned. This has been in the works for a while. I've been out walking for 2 weeks in Manistee, bringing this to the people because it hasn't been in the newspaper. It hasn't been brought by City Council. It hasn't been brought by the Housing Commission to anybody's attention. I don't know where Mr. Hollander is or who he's talking to, but I've got list of people that I've spoke to that all surround these properties. Nobody knew of the proposal and nobody has met Mr. Hollander. So to continue on,
Please hold your applause.
so to continue on to talk about vacating and streets, I think that the discussion that needs to be done is why this is being proposed. So, and you know, we pay the taxes. We invested in our properties in the north side. We chose to stay on the north side and make it what it is today, and we need to be heard, and our opinions need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Jenny Pelton, 329 First Avenue. I'm a Realtor with Century 21 Boardwalk. I have comments on the vacation of Van Buren Street, and I know you said not to, but the proposed development, because that is what we're finding ourselves at. I find it interesting that we find ourselves at a planning commission meeting when there is no mention of any of this type of action on either the Manistee Housing Commission agendas or minutes. That would be subject to further investigation of private negotiations on public funded property. There has also been no notices of this on the agenda for our city council. If the Manistee City Commission needs property, I have a list, which I would be glad to share with everyone, of 16 properties that could be available in Filer and Manistee Township that go with the Manistee address that are for sale right now. That would be the same amount of acreage or more, and 13 of them are owned by the city of Manistee, which I think would be a valuable resource for us city taxpayers to have those properties unburdened from our non-tax rolls put into tax rolls. And I have a list of those properties for anyone that would like them. I also have a major concern about going forward with the Manistee Housing Commission building new buildings when their leadership has had a serious lack of maintenance in the existing buildings. My home and many homes in the city of Manistee are much older than Manistee Housing Commission properties, yet they're saying they need all of this renovation for their buildings. That means there was lack of maintenance, in my opinion. It is very convenient that the proposed developer owns the neighboring property to the current Housing Commission buildings that would be vacated. The proposed developer indicates that the neighboring properties would not decrease in value. I have a listing at 180 Harrison, and the developer offered them 30% less than the list priced. Homes in Manistee have been selling lately from 3 to 8% less than list price. So please don't say that it's going to keep the value when you do this. I had a client from North Carolina last year that was writing an offer on 216 6th Avenue. We were meeting at 10 a.m. to sign the contract. She was walking the neighborhood at 8 a.m. when she saw a city police officer and asked the officer about the neighborhood. This is 6th Avenue, where Century Terrace is. The officer suggested it wouldn't be a good street to buy a vacation home on due to Century Terrace. I hope I and my fellow residents can look to our planning, zoning, and city council members to be looking out for what's best for their citizens, not a developer or a nonprofit run by someone who doesn't even reside in the city of Manistee. Thank you.
Thank you. I asked for no applause, please. Can you please follow the guidelines?
There you go.
Good evening. I'm Tom Apolka. I live at 166 Van Buren Street, Manistee. In 1952, we moved from Monroe Street to Van Buren Street with a beautiful, quiet, nice neighborhood. We had an exit point going through Olson Lumber roadway to Harrison Street, which was fine for everybody, trucks and even the local residents. One day we come home and here's a metal barricade across the road. Van Buren Street was completely shut off. We had no exit. Eventually we went to the city council. In 1979, we got an approval by the council to extend the road as it is now. And we used it since then.
Mm-hmm.
Without an exit, like Mr. Spiker already reported and Mrs. Stocky, I mean, we all have a problem. I try to get on 31, there's a telephone pole right on the corner, and there's another one right next to it. You almost have to get out into the first lane, a part of the way, to see if there's any cars coming from the north. And especially when there's a boat traffic, 4th of July weekend, I was on US 31, the cars were backed up all the way from US 31 all the way to the bridge. So when that bridge opens, all that traffic flows. Try to get out on 31, and then especially when the railroad is coming through, switching the rail cars and maybe even moving them to another location. And so we need an exit. In the wintertime when they plow the snow, our road is plowed last, which is all right, but it gets plowed. But when the banks are high, try to get out on 31, you can't see around the snow bank, especially when, like I said, the telephone pole's sitting right there, and there's another one right behind it. So I'm against the plan, and it would be nice if they would come up with the alternative plan. One of the locations that would be ideal for this whole thing, and there's plenty of it, is the industrial park. We haven't had any major development out there in years, so why not do this and convert this plan into maybe a moderate income or something? But I think the current situation there should be an alternative, that we all sit down together and talk about it and come up with a solution that everybody is happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take your time, one at a time.
My name is Susan Myers, and I live at 212 2nd Avenue. And in the last several weeks, I have read in the newspaper, and that's where I've gotten most of my information, with regard to 2 properties that were going to be developed on the north side that are on each side of my home. And they both were written up as affordable housing. I'm not against affordable housing, but I'm trying to figure out why we seem to be bundling this into the north side at this point in time. There are a lot of homes. We bought our home there only 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and we are summer residents. So, and we chose Manistee because it had a lovely historic history, and it seemed to protect a good part of that. I'm feeling a little bit under siege by the amount of affordable housing that appears to be going up in the north side at this point in time. And I do think that I intend to do more research on what that means specifically, because it just seems like there is too much being concentrated in that area at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's something to consider.
Joy Smith, 164 Harrison Street. I did hear it said that, by Mr. Hollander, that even if you decide tonight to change the roads, that would be rescinded if the plan as he's put forth, doesn't work out that way. I myself have no opposition to housing for people that would have smaller incomes. I think that's important, and it's certainly a problem in our community. I think we all know about those problems we're having with finding affordable housing. So I'm looking forward to the development of the plan with public input, which I would expect would be forthcoming.
You.
That's fine, all right.
Anyone else?
Get up there.
My name is Julie Lewicki. I own the residence at 158 Jefferson Street. I have owned this house since 2008. I recently completed a $15,000 renovation to my home, watched the last piece of siding go up, fulfilling a dream of mine that I've had for 11 years, only to have my dream deflated by the receipt of the letter, which brings us here tonight. Just a few weeks ago, the News Advocate published an article stating that Manistee has over 3,000 unoccupied housing units available. I cannot understand why we need to build new housing for people who obviously don't respect the handouts they've been given, and punish those who struggle to just keep above water and maintain their property and pay their taxes. I don't have numerical status on how low-income housing destroys property values in neighborhoods. I have a full-time job, and I don't even have the luxury of having internet in my home. My statistics are based on real-life experiences. I grew up on Hancock Street in Manistee, and as a small child, it was a neighborhood of working families with few rental properties. I can remember my sister's friends coming over and watching the drama unfold across the street, having our own version of the show Cops, basically was our joke. The properties eventually went from fair to bad to worse as the non-working welfare recipients moved in. I can remember how disgusting the properties became. My neighbor across the street ended up purchasing one of those homes, tearing it down and building onto her own home. My parents dealt with drug dealing, pit bulls, cockroaches, and people moving in and out of the house next door to them for years. They finally bought the property, tore it down, and built a garage. A coworker of mine has a father-in-law who lives up on Vine Street, who's just put into a nursing home. They can't get a good price for that house because of what's going on Vine Street with the low-income housing. I know firsthand what it's like to be low income. I've been low income since I moved to Manistee in 2008. But somehow, I managed to buy my house, raise my daughter without child support, pay my taxes and utilities to the city on an $8.50 an hour job. I was never handed a thing. I fought and struggled to maintain and improve my situation, my income, and my property. A few of my neighbors have already put their houses on the market due to this project. We're losing good, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens from our community. We are enabling people to create these bad behaviors and not take care of their properties. The $5 to $10 million needed to fix up Century Terrace alone should tell us the extent of that lack of accountability by the residents in the city of Manistee. If this type of housing unit is so beneficial to the neighborhood and infrastructure, then I suggest Mr. Holland or put it in his backyard. I can accept senior living or even a marijuana facility, but I'm sorry. But I know what it's like to be low income. I know. And you do what you have to do to bring yourself up and out of it. And I've worked so hard. And like I said, I literally put the last piece of siding on my house and I got this letter. So imagine how upset I would be. And I will be the city's worst nightmare with this place goes in and there's any problems. I will not put up with any of it. I didn't put up with it on Hancock Street as a kid. I called the police all the time. Officer Grabowski remembers. We just talked about it the other day. And I absolutely be the biggest thorn in their side if this goes through. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know other people were waiting their turn, and pretty much everybody's said my opinion already, but I do have another thing to add. My name is Amy Eckholm, 240 6th Avenue. I live directly across from Century Terrace in a house that we bought a year ago. We had to do land contract. We knew the woman who owned this home for, I'll say 20 years. I don't know how long she owned it before she passed away. And she's tried to sell it twice in that time, and then they tried to sell it after she died, and they cannot even sell our property. We're only there because, as that woman just said, you know, we're hardworking, we're poor people too, and we're working hard, and it was the only option available for us to do. But we already know that our property is not, the value is not what it should be. And we know that when we're eventually ready to sell and move on, we can't even fit all our kids, or both our kids, in our house. It's so small. So one day we do want to move on. We know we're not going to be able to sell it. And I actually wasn't aware that the property had turned from public housing back to senior housing because the change, you can't even notice the change. But there's was an ambulance there today. Actually, that was at Harborview. I'm trying to raise my family. I have a very, very young family, so we're kind of up and coming people. We're young people, and we don't want to see where we live, our neighborhood, the whole north side coming with all these public housings. It's hard. We're just trying to scrape by, do the best we can, and raise our children in an environment that's, you know, a little bit nicer. And we've had a lot of problems with the housing after it's changed to senior and disabled. We have dogs pooping in our yard. We have people smoking in our yard. We've had a heroin addict. Someone told us can't even let our kids play there because there's needles there. We've had people using our garbage can for their garbage, including their doggy poop bags. We found glass bottles in our yard. We have also seen signs that someone had a campfire in our front yard. So this is not what we want for our young children. It's not what we want for our community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Campfire in the backyard. Oh, right there. Anyone else? Emma? Sammy? Sammy, I'll try this. Tell us how it is, Sam.
She's trying to leave, let her know.
My name is Sam H. Miller, and we are property owners of two businesses on Van Buren Street. One's a welding supplies business, and the other one is a block business. I've spoken to two of the owners, two of the renters, and they have both stated that they have customers that come in and out of the west end of Van Buren Street. I think it is an affront to attempt to close off Van Buren Street when the people that have lived there, including owners such as us, have had it open for, I would say, the last 40 years, because I remember we had gone to a meeting when the city manager blocked off the street, and we had gone to appeal that, and the city commission was kind enough to consider our request, and it was open. It's been open for the last 40 years. I can't attest to what it had been opened before that, but I think the city planning commission should give serious thought to leaving the property open as it's been for many, many years. I thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
In the back, somebody there. Oh, hey.
The reason I wanted to speak, I wanted to answer some of the issues that were raised, if I might, but maybe you want to wait until.
Mr. Holland, yeah, if you want to wait till the end, and then with that, there's no interaction between the speaker and the audience, please. So, okay, so next up for bids.
$10.
My name's Linda Vitas. I live at 165 Quincy Street. And if there's something we haven't learned we need to, is that we cannot concentrate the poor. It has never worked. You take a look at Reitz Park. What a disaster. What a disaster. I don't know how we can even consider any kind of low-income housing concentrated in a neighborhood and expect this to work. I've never seen a place as dumpy as Reitz Park, except maybe how the north side is treated, period. I could go outside and plant tomatoes in my street. And we're gonna add all of this traffic? We may as well make them horse trails. I don't think this is the way to handle people. I don't think that you should take a bunch of people, stick them up, segregate them and tell them, let's all get along, and the rest of the people in the neighborhood, I don't know. All I know is that history tells us that this doesn't work.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
My name is Mike Duffy. I live at 201 Washington. I have a double piece of property there that abuts Van Buren. Just to the north of that curve there and then to the west. The back piece of property is raised about 7 feet from the front piece of my property. So that is the only ingress I have to that. The people that live to the south of me, their property also is raised. And the only ingress to that piece of property is off of Van Buren also. So by vacating that, neither one of us would have any access to our pieces of property back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Whoever wants to, please come to the podium.
Step forward, state your name and address. If you don't like it, go back.
Sharon Marsh, 231 First Avenue. I'm going to go back a long ways. My mom lived in Century Terrace. She moved there probably about 1983, 1984. It was a beautiful place for seniors. We owned James Family Foods. We delivered groceries there 2 times a week. The apartments were wonderful. The people were wonderful. Whoever made that decision to turn Century Terrace into what it is today ought to all go live in Century Terrace today and see how each one of you like it. We have done a huge disservice to the seniors of this area. We are about to do the same disservice to the people of the North Side. And again, I'm going to follow what this lady said. Every one of you that make a decision, that think that this needs to be here, and you, Mr. Hollander, need to live there. Go and spend a month at Century Terrace and live there. And you'll find out just what garbage goes on there. And I do know some of this from fact, because at one time my daughter was in charge of a home health agency, and they worked there. And the stories are horrendous. We don't want that anyplace else. We don't want it in Century Terrace. We don't want it anyplace on the north side. Find someplace else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to say something?
Let him be a gentleman, Raj.
My name's Randy Papera. I live at 221 Washington Street. I've been a builder my whole life. And I can remember 10, 15 years ago, you drive down on the north side and all the houses were all trash. Not all of them, but just take a ride on the north side now, despite the bad streets. How nice everything is growing up around that neighborhood. I own a house on Washington Street, and I'm in the process of remodeling, and I take care of my yard and everything else. But I don't want to look at that in my backyard. I guess I'm almost speechless because the priority level of this is so far off. Like you said, you can grow tomatoes on Quincy Street in the middle of the street. We have sewage spilling into Manistee Lake. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not even, you guys already know all the information, so I'm not going to stand here and preach about it, but think about it. You're going to add all more units, and we have overflows in the lake, into the lake all the time. The sewage is just one issue, let alone all these other things about enabling people. I understand what it's like when I moved out of the house when I was 17 years old, and I had to have rentals. I had to have, rent houses before I could afford to buy a house. But like you said, when you pile everybody in and just enable them, you're just asking for more trouble, and you really need to fix the things that you already have going before adding more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the truth.
Anyone else?
My name's Dennis Skira, and I live at 1453 Maple Road, Filer Township. I do have several rental properties in the city. My biggest concern here is why should the city take and vacate a public street that all of us taxpayers have been paying over the years to maintain, along with other city utilities and one thing and another, to a private contractor. Joe Hollander has been involved in nearly every subsidized project in town, and that directly competes with private people like myself, private landlords. We pay a higher tax than any of these what called pilot programs, payment in lieu of taxes, almost double, between 40% and 50% higher taxes we pay for the same type of property. And the idea to vacate a city street to, in effect, build another subsidized project for a private, for-profit, because Mr. Hollander isn't doing this for free. He buys the property, he makes a profit on it, he puts together the project, makes a percentage on the total value of that project. Then he gets involved in, and I believe in some of these, he still has an ownership interest in them. And as I've said before, I think he's pretty much found a haven here for some reason in Manistee. He claims he lives at 507 9th Street. I wonder if that truly is his legal address, or if that just happens to be a nice address to put in the newspaper so everybody falls for it. That property is owned by the Olson Trust, by the way, so I doubt that that's his legal address. And I have to comment that with regard to the Century Terrace, I understand now, of course, it's gone back into senior housing, but you literally could get higher than a kite driving down 6th Avenue any time of the day or night.
Really?
I mean, the marijuana smoke was so bad, the drug use is rampant, the stabbings, the assaults, those poor seniors were afraid to even unlock their door, let alone come out. And why we want to continue to make not just Manistee, but the North Side in particular, a welfare state, and that's what you're doing. And nobody's even discussed the Washington School Project. I believe that's another pail that's boiling that nobody's bothered to talk about. So now you're talking 2 projects on the north side, subsidized. You're wrecking this town. And I agree with the last person. Instead of, we've got a major sewer problem in the city of Manistee. I wonder how many million gallons of raw, undiluted sewage went in Manistee Lake the last time. But it's always at least 1 million or more. So, and we keep adding, for instance, the Oaks Prison is on the sewer system. Horizon Point, which is another one of Joe's projects, is on the sewer system. And this payment in lieu of taxes is a joke, because they start off with say a 5% pill. And then we negotiate that down to maybe 2%, like they wanted to do at Licks on River Street. You just cannot keep giving city assets away and wonder why we're in the condition we're in here in the city. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Who's clapping? All right, who's clapping? Stand up.
Jay Marsh, 231 First Avenue. Getting back to the issue at hand on this vacation, I think the council up there gets the drift that it's more than the vacation, it's the development. And somebody mentioned the cart before the horse. I just don't see where you should be able to make a decision on this vacation tonight until more things come to light on the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We'll move on.
We got
one more, okay?
It wasn't, my name is Stephen Laredo. I live at 194 Harrison Street. And I've never been so proud to be a North Sider. Our house was built in 1847, 1845. And we've lived there for the past 25 years. It was my wife's family's home. and North Side was rough. And we've built it up so much, and we take so much pride in what we do, that if the housing development does come in, I don't think it'd be a good thing for the people of the North Side, and especially since now I'm gonna raise my grandchildren on the North Side again. And unfortunately, the only thing I see is greed. And I don't think that we should stand for greed. Manistee's supposed to be a beautiful Victorian town. You wanna take the beauty away from us. The trees, the old Victorian house that's gonna be next to that there. But like I said, I've just never been so proud to be a North Sider as tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca Bennett. I live at 146 Quincy Street. Something I want to say about this, we're already going to be adding senior center to the north side when they get into the Wagner Center, the old church. And so then if we're adding 2 more developments, then you guys want to cut this road off. That does. It's going to limit people on, the time it takes to go places. And I don't want to see a development there. I was 18 years old when I bought my house, and I am still there today. And I've struggled. I've never had help. These low-income people, if they'd go out and get jobs and work for a living, then they could do the same thing I did. Like I said, at 18, I bought my house. I did it on a land contract. I have, over the years, fixed it up. And to hear that all this low-income housing is gonna go in is just so irritating to me, because it is. It's a bunch of trash all over the place, and people that don't care, they destroy everything, they destroy other people's properties. I think it's a really bad idea.
Thank you.
My name is Leah Seigan. My husband and I own that beautiful Victorian house right next to Olson Lumber. And we bought that in 2006, have been just delighted to be part of the neighborhood, watching it improve. And Julie was talking about her house, that she just put the last bit of siding up. I've been watching that. Now, we don't live there anymore. The hospital in 2011 laid off over 40 people. I was one of them. I had to go get a job in Terre Haute, Indiana. So that was an experience. But we've been able to rent it, and all of our renters have been also watching the development of this neighborhood. It was interesting to be right next door to a lumber yard, but we never found it at all disturbing. It was quiet. The neighbors were quiet. Now, we have noticed lately, since we've been coming back, we do have it up for sale, and suddenly no one wants to look at our house anymore, and I think I know why. So we're kind of flummoxed about what to do. We were offered $104,000 for our house, which is right now listed at $147,000. That tells me that they don't see much value. And I'm afraid that that's going to continue to happen. I am absolutely for affordable housing for people. When I would go to Myers and I would talk to people, when they find out that I have a house to rent, they all say, I haven't been able to move out of my mother-in-law's house. I would love to. I'm working here full-time. My husband works full-time, but we just haven't been able to find any place affordable. Now that market, great. I think that we do need to have that. But even more important, I think that you really need to look at a senior living, some transitional, so that people can have independent, move to assisted, and then maybe after that, long-term care. That would be profitable for you, and have a 94-year-old mother. It was very, very hard for me to find a place to have her be where she could be happy and well cared for. So if you want to look at development, I hope you consider that.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Joe Stocky. I live at 169 Harrison Street, right across the street. I would just like to look at that little piece of property and wonder how you're supposed to stuff 48 multifamily units in there, and that's 100, that's 90, that's 100 families. In that little strip of property, that's ridiculous.
We're gonna go high.
Oh, that's what I gotta say about it.
All right, anyone else?
Anyone else would like to speak?
Concern about, I live at 194 Harrison Street. My name is Tanya Laredo, and I've lived there all my life. And my concern is we're saying that we're gonna build these housings for this low-income people who, which what I understand is taken from Century Terrace, who already destroyed their house, because that's why we're doing this, up as well as in Oak Hill, because there are issues there too, and put them in our area here. Why are we building a new place for them when they destroyed that place for them in our town, in our block? So why do they deserve something new when I put myself through school, raised a family, and I was a low-income person myself, and I didn't get nothing new like that, but yet when they went into those houses, especially on Oak Hill, they were already new at one time, and they obviously ruined it. So we're gonna give them another new facility, which we probably help pay for that facility and whatever else they get assistance, and destroy that too. Then what do we do? Gonna go somewhere else? Where we stay there in that area and our cost of living goes down. But our taxes probably will not, because we're supporting them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on. New business?
You can have a.
Mark, if you want. Mark, would you like me to read the correspondence into record?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
I'll go with Mark. Staff report too, on this.
Okay, to Planning Commission from Gary Schmeichel, taxpayer and homeowner at 163 Van Buren Street. We need the west exit of Van Buren Street. I use the west exit when bridge is open, when train is crossing through highway. I use Washington Street 75% of the time because traffic on highway is so busy. Takes 10 minutes or longer to get on the highway. Signed Gary Schmeichel with the date on the bottom. The second one is on a Parkdale Block and Building Supply letterhead to whom it may concern. Parkdale Block has customers coming in and leaving the west end of Van Buren Street, and we would appreciate it if it could be left open. Thank you, Parkdale Block owners, LC Materials. Next one is to the city commissioners. Why are you even thinking of this? All of us on Van Buren Street use this to get to Washington Street and downtown and other activities. All our mail comes from the Van Buren extension. UPS and FedEx deliveries come this way along with larger trucks for deliveries to Prax and Olson's. There's no good reason to vacate the west end of Van Buren Street. If so, except to end maintenance of that part of the street, which the city hasn't been very good at. Even with the mud and huge potholes, the road is needed, and I thoroughly object to its closing. Signed, Ralph Schaefer, 159 Van Buren. This is in reference to the request to vacate portion of Van Buren Street and Jefferson Street. My family moved here in 1952. At this time, we used a roadway between Olson Lumber Company warehouse to travel south to Harrison Street. This was on something road.
Exit road.
This was our exit road, thank you. Along the way, and I don't remember when or year, Olson Lumber Company was planning on constructing new warehouses on their property. A metal barricade was put up across Van Buren Street, shutting it off. We no longer had an exit road. This created a big safety problem for all of us. Eventually, an agreement was made with Olson Lumber Company to open Van Buren Street to Jefferson Street and north to Jackson Street. This was now our exit road, and we agreed not to use the roadway between the warehouse. The problem is with this agreement that we are trying to locate information on this agreement as to how the road was built from Van Buren Street to Jefferson Street to Jackson Street. I thought Olson Lumber Company was given a variance to build their warehouses closer to private property. To vacate these sections now would create severe problems. We would no longer have an exit road trying to get out on US 31 is a problem with heavy traffic, especially when the bridge is open or the railroad is switching or moving cars. Also, it is difficult to see traffic coming from the north around Monroe Street. One has to almost get out in the middle of traffic lane to check for cars. In the winter, this is also hard to see with the high snowbanks. We also need a way for emergency vehicles to enter our road if US 31 is backed with traffic. We should be able to come up with some agreement and alternative option to for all parties. There also has to be some legal government documents as to how the road was built. All options are on the table. Respectfully submitted, Thomas F. Ogden. 166 Van Buren Street, thank you. To Manistee City Planning Commission and City of Manistee City Council. My family has owned for over 100 years the property at 150 Van Buren Street, Manistee, Michigan, and the property at the corner of US 31 and Van Buren Street. We oppose the closing of West Van Buren Street and Jefferson Street to Jackson Street and Jefferson Street to Harrison Street. The closure of these streets will be an extreme disadvantage for our renters, Parkdale Block and Praxair Distribution, as they and their customers enter and exit using West Van Buren Street and Jefferson Street. Also, for residents and others exiting on US 31 can be a hazard in winter and summer because of visibility and traffic. Thank you for your consideration. Miller Bros Iron and Metal Company, signed Sam H. Miller. K. M. Miller. Praxair. I, Paul Lytle, have worked at 150 Van Buren Street for 20 years and use this route daily. My customers also use this street daily going to Washington Street to avoid heavy traffic on US 31, signed Paul Lytle, Praxair Distribution. That concludes the correspondence to be read into record.
All right, thank you. I think Mr. Hollander would like to answer some questions. And again, Mr. Hollander, there should not be any interaction between you at the podium and the audience.
Understand. First, I want to clarify the process that we're following and why we're following it. The property, in order to be developed for housing, would need to be rezoned. It would also need site plan approval. We need to know the site that we would be developing before we seek the rezoning.
Right.
So by coming here tonight and requesting the street vacation, it'll help us define the development site. So that's why we're coming here first. If we came here with the rezoning first, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to seek the vacation. Our site would be a different configuration. There was a question raised as to, first of all, the executive director of the Housing Commission made a statement. I'd like to be able to talk to you more about what the plan is, but in essence, his statement prohibits me from giving any information that I think would be helpful and address many of the concerns here tonight. Okay? So I want you to understand that. I'd like to explain it, but I'm under constraints not to be able to do so. The house at 180 Harrison Street, the owner was here talking about it and talked about don't you put it on buzz and sit on it? The house at 180 Harrison Street is currently listed for $147,000. That house was purchased in 2008 or 2009 for about $150,000. The current fair market value, according to the assessor, is $104,000. All right? It was essentially bought at the height of the market, and the market hasn't recovered. You can't blame that on anything we're talking about here.
Why not?
All right?
You could.
So, there was a question about where I live. I don't know where that 509 9th Street came from, except it may be where one of the Olsons, I think Mrs. Olson may live there, or at least they own some property there. I live in Ludington, Michigan. All right, that's my residence address. Happy to give it to anybody. There's a lumber yard there. We understand that. At one time, the lumber yard, and I think Art may be here tonight, was a thriving business. It was the only lumber yard probably in this market. And if it wasn't, it was a busy lumber yard at one point. It's been here for 125 years, over 125 years. Over the past number of years, particularly since the larger big box operations have come in, private lumber yards have fallen on hard times, and the traffic that goes in and out of there is very, very little. So the fact that it's very quiet there right now is because of market conditions. Obviously, when that yard is sold, and I expect it will be to somebody at some point in time in the not too distant future, whatever goes in there is probably going to create more traffic than what exists today. 48 units was brought up as what we're looking at on this site. That depends in large measure on reactions from the community and the Planning Commission's working, and the staff working with us when we get to that point. 48 units is by no means a fixed figure, all right? And we understand the impact of putting a lot of multifamily housing. It has nothing to do with income, and I can talk about that from many, many years of experience. But putting a lot of multifamily housing, even condominiums, at that density might impact a community negatively. But in terms of affordable housing adjacent to single-family homes, there are numerous studies, dozens and dozens of studies all over the country which have shown no negative impact on value, and in fact, in many cases, appreciation in value. The exception to that, and there is an exception in a few cases where there has been overcrowding or high density, too high a density for the site, there has been some impact on property values, negative impact on property values, but the market has often overcome that. So I just tell you, I've got copies of some of the studies here with me. Research was done. I've done the research many, many times. I updated it the other day. That's not a valid argument. There is one letter did mention concern about closing Jefferson between Van Buren and Harrison Street. It was mentioned in there, okay, vacating that portion. That is not a road today. There is no road there. It's completely vacant. So I would offer that as a correction, or at least a response to that letter. And I'll make one other comment about Hillcrest. Hillcrest Apartments is not low-income housing. Hillcrest housing can accommodate those whose hourly wage will run anywhere from $8 an hour up to $50 an hour. All right, so we've, I think many of you have read the studies that have talked about the need for workforce housing in this community. That's exactly what Hillcrest is there for. And it's not subsidized either, all right? We have some government assistance, but it's not subsidized. It is essentially market rate housing targeting those whose incomes match the workforce in this community, all right? So, those are my responses. I certainly have no problem at all meeting with the residents. I'll come in with the target on my back the next time. But I understand that there's some fear here. I heard that. I heard some anger and hostility. I heard some very unreasonable statements. I'll come armed with facts. That's all I can give you is facts. All right? And if you choose to disagree with me, give me facts. All right? I've been doing this for 40 years, not just here in Manistee. I've developed over 4,000 units in western Michigan, all the way from the Indiana border up to Gaylord.
Mr. Hollander, do you address?
Sorry, I'm addressing you.
Okay.
Apologize. So, we are not picking on Manistee. We're responding to need that was expressed to us. All right, and that's what we hope to follow through on. And we want to work with the community. Nothing is etched in stone at this point, particularly our continuation with this project, all right? That's one of the first things that's going to have to be resolved before you see us again. But we want to keep moving forward until we hear otherwise, and hopefully somebody, if we are replaced, someone else will come in here and carry the mantle forward. But we are willing to work with the community. We have open ears and open mind, and we hope you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you. New business? 168 Harrison Street, vacation request. So I'll turn it over to staff.
This memo is dated July 25th, 2019, to the Manistee City Planning Commission from Kyle Story, City of Manistee Zoning Administrator, with the subject 168 Harrison Street, street vacation. Dear Commission, a street vacation has been requested for 168 Harrison Street, Manistee, Michigan, 49660. The former Olson lumberyard owner, Art Olson, has signed off on the vacation request and support. Attached is the paperwork for the street vacation request. For reference, the definition of street vacation is as follows: a type of easement in which a private property owner transfers the right-of-way of a public street to another private property owner. The street vacation applicant, Joe Hollander, is in attendance for the public hearing regarding this issue and may answer any questions the Planning Commission has. Thank you.
Anything else, Kyle? No? Okay. And open for discussion?
Mr. Hollander stated earlier they were talking about possible relocation to make of Van Buren to tie into Jackson. I'd like to see more information on how he would align that street, because that could be, a new alignment would be a very brand-new built street, which could be more beneficial to people coming through, other than the banged-up street that's there now. If I could see some actual ideas of what they have planned for a street location,
Yeah,
I'd support that.
leave it there, Kyle. Yeah, no, you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
My question, leave that one up there, boss. Was it stated by Mr. Hollander he's going to make an exit to the north to Jackson Street from Van Buren? Is that true?
Excuse me, can you say that again, Roger?
was Mr. Hollander, did he mention about making an exit street from Van Buren to Jackson Street?
Yes, the proposed connection would be within this, orange polygon right here.
But that's not.
Right there?
Yeah.
What?
I don't think that's in the request, though, not right now.
That's not in the request, no.
Okay.
But that's what he had,
right here.
Roger was just asking what he.
Right,
so.
that's what the orange
Yeah.
box represents.
So if we do vote the vacation, this would be created to give those people an exit.
That is what he is proposing, but as Mr. Slawinski has stated, it is not shown currently in the survey documents that accompany the street vacation request. This was brought to staff this afternoon,
Oh,
and so that's why that proposition is there.
The current request is for the red hash mark on the
Yep.
map.
but I mean, okay. So if we worked on that to have that exit, that would solve a good part of the problem, correct? Because it wouldn't be a dead end, you could. there would-
Concerning the grievances with lack of a secondary access to Van Buren Street, it will, yes.
I mean, people could use it coming in and out, going to these businesses. Okay.
You know, I see people using that private drive that's, anybody owner that buys that property has full legal rights to close that off. That is not a public road there, that is a
Right.
private driveway.
Right.
And people keep treating it as a road, and it's never been a public road. It's
Well,
always
okay.
been a private driveway, and I've lived in this area for 62 years.
Wouldn't that be grandfathered in as a road?
No, it never was a road. It was always a driveway for the lumberyard.
Yeah, right. People-
That's how their trucks used to deliver lumber there.
Yeah, back in the day.
I would like to see the plans for putting that road all the way through to Jackson, and I'd like to see a traffic study of the amount of traffic there on 31 and coming out on those streets,
Ooh, that would be tough, good.
because that there is a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
and if this is granted and he builds back there 48 units, that's 2 cars to a unit most of the time, that's added more traffic, so I'd like a traffic study.
Can I comment? Staff has not received any proposals for any type of development on that property. Let us make that clear. We have not even had discussion. What was brought before us as staff was strictly the street vacation request.
Right.
Any discussion between Mr. Hollander and the Housing Commission is just that. It has been discussion between Mr. Hollander and the Housing Commission that staff has not been privy to. If Mr. Hollander were to bring a request forward for development on this site, at that time, it would be staff's recommendation that it come forward as a planned unit development. That way, the Planning Commission has very strict conditioning control over that site property, and you would be able to condition access,
Right.
units, setbacks, height,
Yeah,
and so forth.
that's a whole.
All the way
nother
through to
step.
signage, landscaping, lighting, whatever it may be.
Correct,
So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
yeah.
So the way I'm actually seeing it, when they come through with a development plan, we could do a street vacation at the same time as we approve a PUD in there with the new access, will it be? That's why I'm seeing something, how it could actually go.
Yeah, but I don't want them to close off Van Buren and not have them, give them an access.
No, but I wouldn't close it off now until we had a PUD in place. Once that's there, and with the new access going up, showing where the new access would go to Jackson, then we could vacate the existing street.
Oh, we could do that. I mean, yeah, I would always give them a way to get out or get in, yeah.
As long as we get an access in there and they come up with a feasible plan that's workable,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or we could, yeah.
because there's no way you're gonna come back down to Harrison Street, that
No.
terrain is totally unbuildable for a road at all.
Yeah, no, not the Harrison.
Mike?
Well, again, obviously with as much interest in what's going on the property as well as the vacation, they are two separate issues. When you're dealing with vacation of a road, you're looking at the best interest of the traffic flow. The last vacation of property we had, it showed as a road and it had never been a road, okay? So this is another one that's a little bit difficult. I did go and look at that property. It isn't it isn't much of a road, and part of what they're vacating really is just empty field. It's not really a road now. But with that said,
That's all. Right.
the vacation piece, I think really would need to be tied to the other access road that he was looking at developing, and I would recommend we table this until we can actually see how the traffic would be managed in lieu of a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Pam, have anything?
Yeah, I agree. I think the tabling it until we get, another request with the new, possible relocation at a later date. If that makes sense. I mean, tabling the vacation at this time until maybe he could reapply, showing the actual relocation of a new road on the next request.
Is that what you're making a motion for?
Well,
I'm not making a motion.
Oh,
Make a motion of what?
It's my opinion. He has my opinion. That's what
We're
it was.
just discussing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Excuse me, but the new road would only go in if he gets improvement for the development. So these are really two totally separate issues. The new road is, I mean, the vacation is the Van Buren to Jackson.
uh-huh.
And we're saying, well, we can table the vacation if the relocation of the road goes through. Well, the relocation of the road isn't gonna go through unless the development goes through, and we're not ready to talk about that.
We can actually tie both of them together in one
Not
thing,
today.
when they, not today,
No,
but
not today.
when we come up with a development, we can tie the vacation at the same time as that with relocation.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all done at one time.
Yeah.
So there is a plan in place.
Yeah.
Right now, it's in the middle of it. It's in-
Since we're in this discussion mode, I mean, we have a lot of points coming up. Let's bring them all out, so.
Yeah.
I think we should table this until we see plans of what he wants to develop and why he wants that road closed off and plans to make a better in and out onto Jackson.
Sounds good.
Thoughts?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I agree with you, Bob.
Right.
Tie it all together, and once he makes his commitment as far as vacating the red stuff, then make sure he puts in the gold one. Basically. That way nobody's stuck for nothing, like Pam was saying. You know, if he can't do it separately, because if he doesn't get that, then he won't put this. But if you don't vacate the red, you don't have to worry about the gold, so
Usually don't vacate unless we know why.
it all depends on what you wanna do.
Okay.
See plans.
So is the thought of the commission to follow that step?
I'd like to see us table it till they get a combination of a proposed site plan with everything and put it contingent on a plan going through.
Okay, is that what we want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kinda makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so are we ready to vote?
But I would vote is to table.
Right, right,
And not, because again, I'm not really sure all the legalities of how we can get them to ask for plans and other things when they're so contingent at this point.
Well,
So
we can get
my
a-
suggestion
we
is
can
to
get a-
table it until we get.
Yeah, we can see a preliminary plan, and when we do get the preliminary plan, we can put the contingencies on that plan that, once it gets approved for the plan, or they have to go through with it, then we can do that vacation at that time.
So your motion is?
To table this till we get a full-fledged plan through, at least a preliminary plan to look at and come up with some ideas on.
So we have to go to a site plan review.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the motion. Okay? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Bob, second by Shelley. Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Could you read that motion, that exactly what that motion is? Read it, just so I'm clear.
The motion is to table the street vacation request until there's a traffic study done, including a survey of the road from Van Buren to Jackson, including a PUD site plan, a preliminary site plan to review, to combine it with the street vacation so that we can review it again and add contingencies at that time.
Good?
Sounds good to me.
Good? Are we?
I'm just gonna, I just don't know exactly what goes into a traffic study. They could be something above and beyond, again, I don't know if that's a normal process to do a. Street vacation it is. To do a
Well,
traffic.
we would leave
Be
the
interesting to see what the flow
traffic
is.
study to staff.
Well,
Correct?
but traffic studies are typically completed by a civil engineering firm.
Right.
That has expertise in traffic movements. Staff would obviously review that document and summarize it if necessary for the commission. But it would be on the burden of the development team to provide that traffic study.
Right.
As a condition of street vacation or planned unit development, special use permits, the commission can require traffic impact analysis.
On the street vacation, yeah.
I'd hate to have the city have any more cost into a project like this, and as you said, Rob, that it's on the back of the developer.
Well, I'm sure they got,
Mr. Hollander.
Well, we can't,
we had
we can't do that in the middle of a motion, so I'm sorry.
Did we complete that?
Did we complete the motion and the second? Okay.
He just wanted to
I just
clarify.
think that it should just be tabled until we can get,
Well, now we're,
that's,
what, okay,
what,
so, where,
concerned with piling on a lot of stuff before we're ready to actually
We need more,
hire any.
basically need more information to evaluate this street vacation. We don't have enough information.
So regarding the traffic study, we'd like to clarify the number of units before conducting the traffic study. Is that what you were saying to me, right?
Saying that the traffic study, if I have to read the council correctly, you want the site plan done so you can estimate the number of units, determine the impact that development and that number of units will have on, the traffic impact created by that will have in the area.
calm them down, Mark. Calm them down.
So do you want the traffic study done before the PUD is what the question is? Or will the PUD dictate the amount of units so that we can then do a traffic study? Is that,
That's
okay,
the
so the
one.
motion, okay, so to,
well, okay, now, with that, we're voting on a street vacation, talking about a street vacation, not the development.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
So, and that's what we vote on, that's what the motion has to be.
Right. But, if I might, unless you got more,
Go ahead.
But if we vote on the street vacation, tomorrow he could go up there and put a barricade across Van Buren. Correct me if I'm right or wrong.
No, Roger, the final decision, you are basically making a recommendation to city council. So it would end with the city council when it arrives on their agenda, and then they ultimately take consideration of your recommendation.
But, okay, then it will go to council, they'd make their recommendation, so they'd approve it. So then he could go put a barricade across Van Buren without building the little gold triangle of an access to Harrison, correct?
That is correct. I just wanted to clarify, it's not after the planning commission.
Right, that's, yeah, that's.
Once it gets to council, they approve it.
Yeah.
They approve it.
Yeah.
And it's,
That access to Jackson could be
it would then,
terminated.
yeah, it would be recorded with the registered deeds, the deeds would be recorded and so forth on the property boundaries in the surveys.
I think we have to rescind the motion.
Well, your motion was to table the request.
Right.
which you can still move forward with that motion, because that is neither denial nor approval via recommendation to city council. This is basically you stating that you would like more information on this to consider a recommendation at a later date, is how I understand it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'd like to have more information, so we got, make a more informed decision of what we're gonna do on it, because there
So-
is some loose ends.
Okay, so Nancy, if you could reread the motion, please.
Please.
It's a motion to table the request to vacate the street until more information can be obtained.
That's, yeah.
Where you want it?
Recommendation.
Is that where you want it?
Yes.
Okay. The motion is good, the second is good.
Right.
Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Samansky,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Weiner, Commissioner McBride,
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder,
Yes.
Chair Whitliff.
Yes,
The motion has passed.
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Second, 160 10th Street, special use permit.
Yeah. Well, let's give it a minute, Mark, to clear out.
All right.
If anybody wants to leave, by the way, over, you know.
Love this map. Water districts. Should make them all different shades of green. I know. But I'm just saying, like, it would be kind of funny. Put some little emblems on here. Put like a pot plant that's growing right here, and then like someone exchanging cash for a bag.
You can actually tie the street vacation to a. Maybe done at the same time.
I should take it.
Did this ever?
Yeah, that's already.
You read through this whole thing to make sure there was no extension? Okay. I would outright ask, this is pretty much, there's only two members here that were not on the planning commission last spring. You should almost ask them directly if they, see, there was no, you want me to do that? Ask him, I'm just wondering to ask them if they set a 3-year or 1 year for the special use permit. It was never noted in the permit.
That's what I.
I know. I wonder, dang, we should have pulled a minute.
Because we were only
Minutes
dealing with
from that meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
He's curious where we're sitting.
Well, and also,
That's my partner, Trent Kenner's my brother-in-law. That's me.
give them the
extras?
We got one agenda.
And we gave them all away.
Giving them all out. There might be. Ask everybody that's leaving has an agenda problem.
Ask that woman right there. We don't have one.
Yeah, so that's what's looking at.
Yeah.
What we got coming up. And you're the one right old business. Okay. Second one come out. All right. Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy. I need to
Oh, otherwise,
have these out next time. This is ridiculous.
Especially the next one. That's gonna.
I know.
15, dude. Our packet's gonna be like this.
Well, that's it.
You do realize that our packet for our next one is gonna be like.
come on, Mark.
It's gonna be like an inch.
Dude, so how do we do the
Hey.
Do it, dude.
structure?
Yes.
Yeah, if they want printed copies. If they want printed copies, we burn through.
That was, but
It's called recess. I didn't hear it.
We can, or we can take a little bit of a break.
Mark's like, nope, let's go.
Mark's like, I want to go home.
Yes. Shut your mouth, Kyle. 15's gonna be longer than this. Oh, our meeting starts at 3. Special meeting. Oh, that's good.
I would probably fall over.
Yeah, let's run it through, kid.
Okay, we are going to continue the meeting, so
Yeah, there you go.
What happened to
All right.
You introduce it and then.
Yeah, we can do that. There you go.
All right. We will continue this. 160 10th Street, special use permit. Hand it over to staff.
All right. Parcel 51-712-475-10 has transferred ownership, and thus the approved special use permit pertaining to the usage of marijuana facilities, marijuana grower, has transferred ownership to the new owner as well. Attached are documents including the memo from April 2018 outlining the special use request and special use permit application and narrative from previous landowner, as well as the approved special use permit from May 3rd, 2018. The new owners are in attendance tonight and will answer any questions the Planning Commission may have pertaining to this special use permit transference. Both the previous owner and new owner have been contacted to garner letters of authorization and adherence, and currently we have just the one from the new owner, so.
All right, if the new owner is in attendance, please approach the podium, please. Name and address.
James Adams, 14934 Pleasanton Highway in Bear Lake.
All right. And please explain, we gave approval back in 2018
Yes, sir.
on this parcel, which was the old Century Boat loading shed. I guess if there are questions from the commission?
Sir, I only have one. Based on what we had originally approved as a special use permit, are you expecting to have any changes to that, or are you basically going to proceed as what we had originally approved as a special use?
We're gonna proceed with what you approved originally. We're gonna have Spicer Group handle it.
Okay.
And a question for staff is on, I'm gonna say legal, I may be the wrong,
Yeah, so, the planning, the zoning ordinance, section 18, special use permits does authorize the transfer of special use permit from an existing owner to a new owner, as long as they follow the conditions of the special use permit. One thing that is required that we do not have, though, is a letter from the previous owner authorizing the transfer. Staff has contacted that individual a few times, has not received that letter yet. So that is one condition that is necessary. There's no need for a mailing or a public hearing in regards to a transfer of a special use permit, as outlined by the zoning ordinance, section 18. One question I do have for the Planning Commission, since none of your staff were here at the time of the approval of the special use permit, there was no time frame outlined within the special use permit for expiration. And the zoning ordinance outlines that a special use permit may be good for up to 5 years. I wanted to know if any of you could recall any discussion about any length of time that this permit was outlined for. I just want to make sure that if there was discussion that this was a limited time frame, that we know about it right now prior to moving forward.
well, remembering going through this process in 2018, I believe it was 1 year.
Well, I thought they showed, as far as they showed improvement, it was 1 year, yeah. I agree with you,
So-
Mark.
Yeah.
But if it was dead, if they had no improvement or did nothing for a year, then it would stop after 1 year, as I recall. I could be
Okay.
wrong.
Probably want to ask Rob.
Rob, it seems to me, if I'm remembering correctly, it was April of 2018. They were still waiting to hear from the state, and there was some confusion as to whether they had to get the license from the state or the license that the city was making available. And I believe their attorney came from Grand Rapids and spoke with us, and he indicated the state was delaying So I'm not sure we would have put a time frame on it, knowing
Right.
that it was kind of out of their control at that point.
That makes very reasonable sense. The city codified ordinance outlines that a special use permit must be obtained prior to the city issuing a marijuana license under the codified ordinance, which would require reciprocal agreement of the state of Michigan. So, having said that, if you read that into the record, staff would accept that because there is no time frame listed within the special use permit.
And the state took forever to make it so they can actually, that may have been a lot of the time frame ate up, waiting for the state to give the approvals on stuff in that year time
Well,
frame.
and still has not.
And yeah, it's true.
They're expecting November is the last that I heard, so.
Yeah, it'll be a while yet.
And so it really, the state holding them up, there's no way I can see where we can hold them to that, because the state's not permitting them to
Well,
move forward.
As long as it's out of our hands, we can't. there's nothing
And maybe
we
I
can
was
control.
thinking about a grandfathered or an improvement to the property if it's vacant a year. That's probably where my thought was at that point.
Yeah, and
So,
previous special use permits that we've reviewed that this commission has approved had timeframes listed within them. So I have a feeling that that was probably the case, and that's why Denise did not include that at the time.
Right.
That sounds very reasonable.
That sounds reasonable.
After, given like a period of time after the state makes a decision?
Yeah, if the state makes a decision, we get it.
After the state makes a decision, can we put a time, like a time frame on it at that time?
Yes, you could. It is a special use permit, but we're talking about an amendment process to the permit, not just a transfer, which if it's a non-substantive change, then it would not require a public hearing, but we would need to obtain the city attorney's determination on if it's either non or substantial. So,
Well, from what you said though, we can't actually do anything until we get the other letter.
you could approve transfer based on the
Acceptance.
letter coming from the previous property owner. You could do that
All
tonight,
right.
condition it on that.
With that, with that
condition.
I just wanted you to note that we don't have that yet, and we need to obtain that according to the requirements of the zoning.
Could we make the,
Make that
could we
work.
make this where, you know, that we approve based on that and also include an amendment that after issuance from the state, work is required to begin within 1 year? Is that-
I feel that that's an actual amendment to the special use permit. That's,
All right.
That'd be a separate issue.
is there a time frame?
there is an
Trying
automatic
to-
time frame that work is to be initiated within the time frame of the special use permit. Yes, that is in the ordinance.
All right.
Well, let me
But,
say,
sorry, Jimmy.
let me say one thing, is that the way the state regulations are at this time, I have purchased the property, paid for it, we own it, and we have to get a permit from y'all and permission from the city
Right.
to do this before we can get a state permit. So it's kind of backwards, but
Yeah.
Well,
that's the way the state's got
But
it.
yeah, as far as what you're asking for, I don't see, there's no problem.
State license.
Now, let me ask you, is there any type of time frame on receiving correspondence from the the other owner?
I contacted the other owner early this week and late last week and haven't had any correspondence yet. I mean, I couldn't give a timeline for when they would respond. I can call them every day until they do. I'm not sure what a good timeline would be, maybe a month, I don't know, less.
So we could approve it with the condition?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that fair to the commission?
What was that, Marco?
Is that,
That we
approve it with
the
with the conditions?
That we received the letter.
Oh, yeah.
By the
Is that a
next-
registered letter you're sending, or you're calling?
No, we're waiting.
It's just a letter with a letterhead and a signature. Yeah.
Can
It's
be, it
simple
could be an
letter. They
email,
can-
right?
It can be one sentence, literally. I am willing to transfer the
don't
special
know
use
what- yeah.
permit to
That be emailed?
the current owner. Yeah, so,
Short and sweet.
yeah,
Okay.
With a signature.
with a signature.
He is aware, yes. He does know and acknowledge the transference. I just don't have the written correspondence yet.
I don't know.
So, I guess,
I'll make that motion,
okay,
that we accept the transference of the permit with the receipt of the letter from the current owner.
Second?
The,
Former owner.
the current name on the special use permit.
Right,
Okay.
from the name.
Motion by Mike and a second by Bob. Any other discussion? None? Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Smansky,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner,
Yes.
Commissioner McBride, Commissioner Yoder, Chair Whitliff.
Yes. Thank you so
Motion
much.
passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Old business, 294 12th Street special use permit.
Okay. Dear Commission, a special use permit has been applied for at 294 12th Street. The new application is a major substantial change to the existing use. The existing use is a self-storage facility with 4 structures currently. The new special use will request a 5-phase expansion process with additional storage in each phase. The previous expired special use permit conditions are attached for your review. The following conditions are questionable to the applicant and need Planning Commission review. Detention pond for managing stormwater, installation of fencing around facility, gate with keypad, 4 boulevard trees. The special use applicant will be in attendance and may answer any questions the Planning Commission has. The Planning Commission may entertain allowing the applicant to apply for the new special use permit without fulfilling the full conditions from the previous special use permit based on answers to the questionable conditions above. The proposed site plan for new special use permit is attached as well for review. Thank you.
Okay. And the developer owners are here. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Frank Kidder, 5024 Woodrow, Shelby.
Okay.
Joe Hayes,
5150.
5150 West Woodrow Road, Shelley, right next door. I was gonna get the business one, I was getting, so never mind.
So, with this, you want to expand, and I live on 10th Street, so I drive by your facility.
Basically, it's engineered to fill the piece of property with five phases.
And the original special use had a detention pond on the east side, and we're moving forward with that?
Yes, sir. That's where Paul's taking the sand out,
Okay.
his permit.
I
So
can
the-
give some detail on that detention pond. The original site, first 4 buildings, which are there today, the existing grade of the property met that retention requirement, because there's kind of a dip right there. So as we build into that area, then we would need to create the detention pond along the east edge.
So it's basically gonna be a second retention pond in there.
Well, no, that, building 5 would go where the existing
Oh, where the existing one
retention
is.
area
Okay.
is. Exactly, yep.
And so where would the new retention pond go, or detention pond go?
It's on
On the
the east
east.
side, that whole east side.
The right-hand side where those lines are close together, that's showing a pond. Or,
And
it would
is that-
probably honestly never have water in it because it's sandy soil.
Isn't that right above Goodwill?
Yeah, that's where
Yes.
that's where the radio antenna used to be, the radio antenna used to be up there.
So would there, is part of this as well to some kind of retention wall then be constructed behind the Goodwill? Because right now, if I'm not mistaken, on one side, it just slopes down.
Yeah, it's straight down.
Yeah, it's just behind that building.
How far are you?
Really steep,
Right.
and then it would, it shows it's, would.
That shows the
It's like a
hill,
berm
basically
and then a
berm.
low spot and then back up to where the buildings are. Does that make sense?
Well, again, what I'm trying to vision is how much of that hill is actually gonna be gone by the time you level this off? So what kind of a variance there's gonna, right now, there's a significant variance, right? But you're really planning on taking that whole hill down, correct?
Right.
Removing it. So
Yeah, there's,
I'm just wondering how that's gonna, how that land between the,
That would be a berm, which shows on the right, far right.
okay?
That is a berm.
Right.
That holds.
Yeah, those contours go upward there.
Okay.
There was a lot of soil erosion coming down behind Goodwill and on the other, north side of that hill.
yes, in the last storm that we got hit before the grass took hold, so we have to repair that.
But even
Exactly what you're talking about.
Before that, there, you could see a lot of erosion and
Before we owned it, or since? I'm not.
Since.
Okay, and it was coming into the Goodwill property?
comes down
into
that
the street?
hill, and then the side facing north down into that,
Into that valley.
yeah.
Toward the car wash.
A lot of erosion.
Yeah, and when we were in construction, we put topsoil there and seeded it. And there's some maintenance to it.
Yeah, I don't think there, well, I think since we fixed it, we just had that one big rain, that big gully washer that kind of blew it out a couple weeks ago or something, yeah.
And then how about, can you talk us a little bit about beautification as far as landscaping,
Fencing?
and the fencing?
So the fencing was in our original plan and is still in our original plan, but it was not dictated us as a requirement. So we're planning to do it eventually, but we don't currently have like a timetable like it's gonna be here, okay? And then we did eventually get our excavator to, kind of on the east side, we've got a berm there, and then to just continue to,
Yeah, we were waiting because there's gonna be, we were putting sidewalk
Oh, yeah,
in.
the
And
road
not,
thing, yeah.
and we knew the road was coming
Yeah.
through.
Right.
So, we've got that all set up for sidewalk and then, topsoil and grass. And I think the first meeting, there was some trees that were required.
Yeah, I think on the east side mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, on the west side.
On the west side where we made that berm.
Yeah.
Several of us were on the commission at that time when you came before us. And you just mentioned the fencing, but I thought that the fencing was in the original special use.
The gate was.
The way I remember it was we said the gate had to be in before they could open, and the fencing could be as the phases went on.
And the permit states, the installation of fencing around the facility will be considered a minor non-substantive change, which can be approved by the site plan review committee. That's what it says about fencing.
What date was that?
It's from, what's that first page? I think it's from 2017, if I remember, but I'm not positive.
Just,
For that gate to keep kids from driving in there and,
yeah.
Right.
running.
But it's the gate to nowhere, so,
Right.
it kind of makes us look a little ridiculous. We make you have a gate, and yet you can drive on both sides.
You get stuck in that sand pretty easy.
Yeah, the sand will stop you, but, the gates and the fencing, because it's a phased system, is usually in the phases further down.
Sure.
And I remember there was a homeowner that requested the gate.
Is it going, when you do fence, is it gonna be the same type of fencing that is in your Ludington
Yes, sir.
location? Okay.
What type of fencing is that for reference? Is that chain link or is it different?
Combination
It's a
of- there's some
it's a very
decorative
nice
on the
fence.
front, and chain link on the
It's
side.
like it looks like a wrought iron almost when you drive by.
Yeah.
It's a very nice looking fence.
It's a nice looking facility that you have on 10.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
We're trying to, and that one, we're continuing to improve our landscaping there, and the same thing here, we're just kind of evolving.
And I hope this one emulates that.
Thank you.
Even though we're better than Ludington, so.
You plan to have someone on site?
Everything is online.
That appears with a lot of these new storage units are going. I see new ones South Ludington is strictly online. And a couple other cities I've been through, and it says, rent, here's your web address to call.
And we have a person, that they inspect the buildings once a month, for vacating and so on.
And you have camera surveillance as well, correct?
We do not.
You do not?
You have a person on call in case there's an issue with, like, when the fences are, when the fence finally, will there be a person?
Yeah, like the
contact
gate,
number to call?
the gate I can remote open. That's usually the problems we'd see.
And on calls, him and I take turns with the phone, and,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't answer in the middle of the night, it's not
So
24
if there's
hours.
issues with that, there will be a contact number for
Right.
people to contact to get it.
Yes.
Now, it-
Not 24 hours,
Correct.
you said.
Well, and that, and we're limited.
We're limited here
limited.
because of the time.
Yeah.
is, now in your Ludington location, do you have cameras there?
No,
No? Okay.
no, sir.
No, because we set the hours of operation,
For daylight.
daylight hours.
Yeah,
What is your
lighting is a good idea, and we're not opposed to it, but we don't, we'd like to, but, you know, maybe
Yeah, that's
add in the future, and I don't know if that would require a planning commission, that would have to go through approval if we wanted to add lighting.
Is the 12th Street project putting any street lighting up there at all anywhere?
But it's on the corner, so it should be a street light there.
On Cypress?
Maybe
Or, no, 12th and
12th and Cypress.
Cypress.
Cypress, yeah, 12th and Cypress.
Well, maybe it'd be somewhere where you wanna add another light somewhere to
And we,
complement that light or something.
Is there any electricity in these units?
no, sir.
No? Okay.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea. No water either.
No, sir.
No water? No? Not even a bar?
Yeah, okay.
Carpeting.
No carpeting either.
No carpeting?
Maybe in the
Okay.
storage units, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead.
Staff has several questions.
Okay.
And the reason for the, extension is because business is good?
Business is good.
Business is good.
So the staff's first question is, the electrical on the gate, how is it powered?
We have power, we have a meter by a power pole that's connected to the gate.
Can you show that on your site plan, when it is submitted? It is a requirement.
I mean, we're saying a future site
Yeah,
plan.
yeah,
just-
sure.
It's not shown on there?
No,
I thought
there's
it was
no,
that box.
Hold on, I can zoom in.
Here.
There's a laser
Yeah.
pointer right here.
There is a laser pointer.
It is, I
Hit that
know.
red button.
Yeah.
Doesn't help. No.
And
Yeah.
Worse.
Yeah, it's not defined there, so.
No.
so, and then if additional lighting were to go in,
It's right in here, so, yeah, it's not shown on the drawing.
and then if additional lighting is proposed, then we would like to see the electrical for that lighting as well in a future
We're
plan.
not proposing any lighting at this time, I just mentioned, I mean, if we did want lighting, my question was, would we need to bring it?
Yeah, so our recommendation for that, though, would be put it on your site plan, because that would be considered a substantial change in the future. So if you wanted to add lighting, you'd have to come back in,
And do
hold
it?
another public hearing. So you don't need to build it if it's on the site plan, but if you wanted to add in the future, it'd save you having to come before the commission again and have another public hearing.
It could be like,
I just assume not mess with it. I'm
it
sorry.
could
I
probably be
brought
put on some, like in
Yeah.
some of these developments you see, they put the draw thing on there, but it also put it as need not be built.
Yep.
Yep. The other question.
Get that all in here.
The other question staff has is fencing phases. With the phases, when will it go in, when will it be completed, and in what phase will it be installed? So if the lifetime of this project and the phases, you know, if it's spread out over many years, when will we see a fence around this structure?
Yeah, we haven't really discussed the time frame. We put a fence up in Ludington and then did a new phase, had to take the fence down for
Get the trucks
construction.
in, right.
But it was,
I've seen when I drive by that place every day to work.
We got the
I've
fence
seen-
up now, though.
What's that?
The fence is back up now.
Yeah, but I see where you've been doing your phases, where you've been adding the fences, the phases went along.
And that's what that would be our suggestion. And I get it, you don't wanna have to have a fence up around, your construction site, but at least it makes it look viable when you have the fence on both sides of the front gate. And even maybe around to the left, because that's phases.
Around on Cypress.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and then the final question from staff is, how long do you anticipate a completion of all your phases? I know when we had spoke, we requested that you put them in, but a timeline as far as generated would be beneficial not only for us, but for the commissioners as
A
well.
lot of it's market.
Okay. Do you have an initial plan, like,
I did guess, you can do your guess, my guess would be maybe from here on out, maybe one building a year. So if there's,
I think there's 5.
well, the fifth building we'd like to do in 2019, then there's 2 more full-size buildings and then 2 kind of half buildings, so that would be 19, 20, 21, and 22, so 4 years would be, I think, a reasonable estimate.
So condition the permit for 5 years, maybe?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And the fencing to follow?
Well,
as the phases.
as phase,
Right.
as it's phased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is all staff has.
And that's, if it's
On the
important.
the south and the.
Yeah,
see that.
we don't want 'em to have you guys look bad either, so.
Yeah,
Well, and it's, again, it's been something that's been brought up by neighbors,
Sure.
right.
that they expected to see it, and they haven't, and
It's gonna change quite a bit with the sidewalk and everything going in.
Right.
with-
I can,
with Bud.
I can see the west side and the south side more of the fence, more than the east and the north right away where you're still
Yeah.
building and.
Could we stop at like existing building?
yes.
So
Right.
for construction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know how far you can go east at the most,
Right.
so.
Yeah, yeah.
The road's limiting you there, but
Don't
going
make no much
fast.
off of fencing, eh,
They're going to
guys?
east.
And the same thing with landscape. And then, to be honest with you, on the north side of the property, and Trent and I really haven't talked about it in detail, just so you know, but, so I'm kind of spouting off my brain. The north side of the property and the east side of the property, because of that steep hill, might, I don't know if we would require it, that, I mean, from our standpoint, that we would be worried about fencing that side.
If it's,
Yeah,
if
some of
it's
the-
cosmetic,
But,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
It is a fairly steep hill there.
Yeah, the old radio
Well,
station.
it's almost impossible, then the other one, you'd have to have a, mud bogger or something to get up the hill.
Yeah, four-wheeler to get up on the backside.
So I wouldn't, and we could talk about it, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I would automatically say we're gonna go all the way around.
and Ludington is basically the front and sides, and it's kind of the same deal.
Right.
It's very hard access anywhere else,
Right.
so it's not fenced.
Yeah, you got a little swamp on the one part.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, you do what you gotta do.
I understand timelines for construction and everything, but the next timeline would be to have the new site plan showing the electrical and the lighting need not be built with fence phases and the 5-year timeline to be presented by the September 5th meeting, which then can be approved for the new special use permit, which then will be able to continue with your project. In that regard, I need the site plan as soon as possible to mail out the people within 300 feet so we can get this process going.
What's wrong with this site plan?
Oh, it's just, it doesn't show the electrical going in and the lighting that was requested from the planning commission tonight. Even though it might not be built, it's still something that would be a condition for the special use permit. Regarding the fence phases also, it hasn't been showcased or determined, and that's the answer right now.
I'm hearing that the planning commission wants us to show lighting on it, even if we do not intend to do lighting.
On the site plan.
All it would have to be, say, a site, have a lighting shown, but it could be still labeled, need not be built.
And that's only to cover, so in a few years, maybe the
Check
customer
yourself.
demand may be that they want
And the,
lighting.
and the lighting plan will be already in the plan, so you don't have to come back to us to get approval.
Is there a path for us to get approval or conditional approval that doesn't require us to wait another month?
We still have to do a public hearing for this because it's a new special use substantive change, and we couldn't do it tonight based on the conditions not being discussed or met from the previous special use permit to continue the project. This is a major addition to this land, and this is something that needs a public hearing with mailings. So the earliest we can get this together for you on the timeline of construction is September 5th. Which is when the next possible planning commission meeting is that could see this site to this extent.
Okay, so I'm gonna write some notes here. We want lights that need not be built.
I can also email you this too in a memo if you like, but yeah, the lights need not be built, the electrical going into the property.
Even if it's temp power?
Anything that shows the power for that gate. The fence is being phased, even if you're, suggesting just the east or the west side and the south side. I mean, I think that's something that we were considering to be phased because now it's, might not be feasible on the east side or the north side. And then the 5-year timeline will be discussed later on the September 5th when we determine all the stipulations for this special use permit of substantive change. So,
Yeah, with the construction going on 12th Street, I can understand the fence on the south being kind of delayed for that being done because of the construction. So
It's coming along nicely.
And it has been, to finish the south side, because we knew they were tearing that road up, we didn't want to go all in with our.
Yeah.
Within the site plan, it's also beneficial for the power for the lights that they be shown with need not be built as well. So just to cover your bases, so you just don't put a light in there and need not be built. please show how it's gonna be powering the lines, so the lines can be ran.
We need to show where the electric is underground going to
Pension
the
pond.
pole.
Well, how you plan to power the lights, and then the gate, how it is powered, it needs to be shown, yes. But-
Like just some
Schematic of the underground
Yeah,
wire.
yeah, it's an underground wire line.
And then,
you know, with the
yeah,
dashes.
and then on the ones for the lights need not be built, so
Okay.
you guys are covered, because the last thing we want to do is call you back in for lines not being on the plan.
Can I ask a question? I probably asked this before when you originally came before the planning commission. On the retention pond, is that just a sandy-based retention pond? Is that what that's gonna be? Is there gonna be a
Rain garden.
hard surface, a liner, just sand?
Natural, I thought it
Okay.
was.
Yes, that is my understanding, and it's our, the West Shore Consulting guys have kind of worked with, whoever's kind of like in charge of that, so, but that was designed to handle 2 100-year floods on consecutive days, like just some. It was-
Back to back.
Yeah, the reality is, I mean, and so, but the, you know, it's just really, it's well-drained sandy soil on the top of a hill, so the actual, of it ever having water in it,
Yeah.
in my opinion, would be almost 0% chance of happening.
Yeah, because then
So-
there's a big drain on the northwest corner that goes into Storm.
Yeah.
And then we have a berm all the way on the north side, which isn't a tall berm, but
Right, it's kind of like a.
to kind of contain
So you're
and
thinking,
flow to the
you're
east.
thinking you had no erosion after this storm on the 20th of July?
We did because it hit our berm and the grass hadn't established yet.
Yeah, so it blew the
So
berm
there's a
away.
gully about, right now, about this wide on the north side of, I think, building 2.
But you're planning to have grass on the berm before winter hits?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's planted and it's taken, it just wasn't quite sturdy enough for how much rain we got in that one hit, so.
Yeah, because Paul, when we started, Paul put topsoil all along that north side going down and then
Yeah, so
planted
that's all
grass.
been seeded, I think I don't think, other than that one, the one gully, I don't think we've had any, we can double check that.
Can you just confirm the drive width of between the buildings? I think it was like 30 foot, right? Or 25?
20, I believe it's there 25 between and 30 feet on ends.
Okay, that's good for the fire departments.
Yeah. Well, they have to approve that anyhow, so they can get the access, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, the safety department.
Yeah, he's looked through it and said it was okay. Regarding the phases and how long it takes, calling the next phase 1, if you will, how long will that phase take you? For example, you get your permit or something mid-September, let's say, will you be able to build that this year in your building timeline, or?
We're pushing up against,
Right.
for ground frost, but it'll be close. Ideally, we would at least get the concrete in before the ground froze, and then we could have
Build
the
it.
buildings up and ready for spring.
Okay.
That would be.
Be ideally.
It'll be close, but we're trying to make
Now,
And
August
that's our goal.
the,
August 24th, the road should be completed. That's the timeline anyway, so.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'll send a memo to you regarding the different things we discussed about the site plan, and also Steve Valier, I think that's the West Shore. And we can go from there in regards to the timeline for the public hearing, which will be on the September 5th date, which will then be a time to approve this.
And then you
I'll
could-
try it. The last one that I missed, I didn't realize that he didn't turn that around quick enough to be in the July meeting. So when would you need to have that back with this information on it to be at that meeting?
I need to mail everyone, I think, 14 days from September 5th, so I'm gonna
I got you.
like early teens in August, I would say, latest. I mean, he has,
Right, yeah.
Before the 18th or
15th, August?
Yeah, this is August already.
We would need it, the 14th.
so it gives
That gives us time to get the mailing out, because we have to get the mailing out, we have to post a notice in the News Advocate, and we don't want to contact the
2 weeks.
Pioneer Group and make a payment and then have like the site plan rescinded by
Yeah,
yourself or
it's
something.
not big changes, it won't take them long, I just
Yeah.
don't want to,
Yep.
Sit
give them
on
a
it.
deadline.
Yeah,
August
just 2-week
14th.
turnaround. I think that's feasible for Steve.
So we talked about the phases in the buildings going forward with the fence.
Right.
And then, what are we doing, what do you need to see as far as on the west side and the south side?
We'd like to see the west side with a fencing all the way down it,
Yeah.
honestly. Regarding the south side, up until maybe where the gate is, would be feasible. If that's if that's feasible, I mean, that's something that would look very nice for that area and block the storage units and bring a sense of place for people who are going from that side.
20 foot past each side of the gate. Like Mike said, what's the sense of having the gate there, you know? We got nothing to stop. But, yeah.
It's, I mean, it's a money thing.
Yeah, I know it's a money thing.
It just
But I mean,
costs
you
money.
know, you gotta spend money to make money.
We're trying.
I know, but you're spending on the buildings, we're looking at the aesthetics.
I totally agree.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yep, I do.
But, yeah.
Okay. September 5th will be the day that we see their new site plan, and we'll go from there regarding stipulations for the
Right,
grant.
you're gonna
Does
let
that have
them
to
know
go
what
through a
they
site
need.
plan review?
Yeah, I'll take care of that regarding the engineer again and the DPW as well as the fire chief and the police.
Quick.
It's already happened before, and with these changes, I can go to them without having a meeting with everyone involved. Their schedules are pretty tight. I can go into them individually and say, this is the new change, you've already approved this one, but this is the new, and it won't.
Pretty much the spacing between the buildings is the same with the existing that they already approved.
Kyle, does that have to go through the site plan review committee? Or does it just, do you take care of it with the city or with the fire, DPW and police?
We could take care of it through the DPW and the police and the
Yeah.
fire chief.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Okay.
All right. So this, I guess,
When they get all that information, they're gonna come back to us.
Yep.
You give them what they need.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we got it, yep.
You got it all?
yeah.
Check with Kyle, he'll tell you, make sure, you know, don't hurt to double check.
No, it doesn't.
You guys around in Ludington or Hart, where are you from?
We live in Shelby.
Shelby.
Calva?
Shelby.
Shelby, oh, Calva. Shelby, yeah, so I mean.
Wrong county, Raj.
Down Tiger Country.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
There's a bomb next to it.
Or-
Hit a student show.
Good comment.
So this is,
Information, they're gonna come back. Oh.
Restaurants in the state.
so,
Sold business, so.
so this will be tabled until September is what I'm understanding, correct?
Right.
There's no decisions to make except.
No, there's no application.
The public hearing.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
cannot make a decision.
Yeah, yeah. So it's tabled until the 5th.
Right.
Okay.
Thank
Hey,
you for your
thank you,
time.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just open discussion.
Thank you. Okay, moving on along.
Yep.
Public comments and communication. All comments and handouts from the speaker at the podium will go through the chair. Also, if there's any interaction between the podium and audience, I'm sorry, there will not be any interaction
Tell them where we're at.
between the podium and audience. If these rules cannot be followed, it'll be terminated. So, thank you. Correspondence?
Correspondence. None.
None to report.
Staff report.
Sorry.
Staff reports?
Do we have any public comments at all?
Yeah, public comment. So I'm sorry, Jim. Got a little ahead of myself.
James Grabowski, 1235 Cornell Street. I'm with them cabinets up there. I hated them from the start. I told you people that. They took and put those things up there. The fence ain't up, and I don't care what you say, they were supposed to have the fencing up. That was the agreement Denise made when she was here that night, that fences would be up. There was supposed to be no lighting. Yeah, I know about the pond. The additional cabinets, I didn't know about. I'm going home to find my contract. I asked Thad Taylor for these things, and I'm gonna jump his ass tomorrow, because he was supposed to get me copies of all this, and he didn't. So I'm on the city council, so I'm gonna be asking tomorrow for, because I think this is disgusting that they put those things up there, because it's been so much nicer to have homes up there rather than to have these things, because I've had more comments from people about how terrible they look. So, I mean, if that's what you wanna do is sell property, that's pretty poor.
Yeah.
So, and I've had people come to me that are on the boards that have said, Jim, they have not complied with the restrictions. So, the trees ain't up, and I don't care what you say, oh, I'll give you 5 years. No, they're supposed to have the trees up, they're supposed to have the fence up.
Yeah.
And I've watched all,
Address the
I
plan.
don't know where they're addressed.
I know, I'm just saying
where
the
the
staff
address.
has nothing to do with
And the thing is, you know, I've been through this thing, and I've watched these people pull around the gates and all winter long, and I think it's crazy to put that place up there.
There you go.
But you guys agreed to it, so I intend to move out of there eventually. I'm not gonna stay there, because I'm living there at low-income housing, as you all heard today, about all the what goes on, and I have that day and night with a nut that stands outside saluting to people, and then I put up with these cabinets. So I wish you'd put it in your neighborhood and see how you like it. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I got a drug dealer alongside the guy that, I had the cops today, two city cars up at one house, I had the sheriff at another house, and that goes on all the time. So it's not fun living up there. I didn't know that, when Clinton put all these people in these homes.
Jim, we're getting off the subject, please. So
Well, I know it is, but I'm telling you why it's a bad area, they put these cabinets in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've made the decision, but I'm gonna find out tomorrow more.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jim. Good luck.
Anyone else would like to speak?
All righty.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Staff reports?
So as we know, the special planning commission meeting will be on August 15th. It's scheduled for 3 p.m. We have 10 applicants presenting, between 15 and 20 minutes per presentation. As not stipulated, though, can be said at the meeting as to what you expect, and then 15 minutes for questions. We are recreating a large map that showcases all the different applications and site plans overlaid on each other to showcase what the district will look like in a large congruent small plan, if you will, of every existing site plan and what it will look like. That being said, it will be a highly attended meeting, I think, and putting it in here will mean that we'll need to stack the chairs a certain way to maximize the space. Being in here was the best option, as for many different reasons regarding conflict of interest at high schools and other things with fees and permits and things at the local theaters and such. So we'll need to pack the place really tightly as best we can and keep it to a consistent, 30 minutes per application, because at 10 applications, this will go on, for 5 or 6 hours. And if it starts at 3, we should consider a recess point too, to take a break, to kind of digest what's happening, walk around, get some water. 15 minutes might be adequate. Not sure what you're thinking, but the staff will be garnering different PDFs from the applicants. If they don't have anything, we'll just put their site plans up and they will be able to discuss it. Each of the teams has had a presentation outline to go over that we've given them how do I say this, like a potential presentation outlining their site plan and their previous experience in this field. And this process doesn't stop with the planning commission. It obviously goes to city council, so we're just dictating the land use, and we can stipulate the special use permits to maximize this opportunity to make sure that they are adhering to everything that we have envisioned for this area, including, losing canopies and adding rain gardens or whatever we've discussed in the past. So this is the one night, wear your nice suit is what we're thinking we're gonna be doing, and coming in here with some serious focused direction as to what we wanna see for this city. It's a public hearing after all, so there could be multitudes of public comment, and we just need to stay focused on a timeline, is what I'm saying.
So with the public comment, can we limit the time frame of somebody speaking?
For an application, for an applicant, or for
With the public?
maybe, what do you think, Rob? 1 or 2 minutes?
2 minutes? 2 to 3 minutes.
But showcasing that anything that's already been said should not be repeated, unless that's something to consider too. Because a lot of these comments are saying the same thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, then, are we expected to make a decision that evening? on
Good
the
question.
applicant?
No, so everything in our opinion and recommended to be tabled for the September 5th meeting. It's just too much information, and the breadth of the opportunity here shouldn't be, discussed for every applicant. You should give it some time to consider and digest it and divulge what this would mean for the community. So we're recommending tabling it until September 5th, unless you want to consider even another special meeting to have these decisions in the middle of September. I'm not sure. because September 5th will have other things on the agenda. It won't just be a special meeting. It'll be a normal meeting. You know, we'll see the self-storage folks, you know. It's just a matter of how you want this to play out. I would suggest having a special use meeting in the middle of September. Give us a month. We can look at it. We can put it on a screen. I mean, it's up to you. It really is.
Well,
but-
we've currently,
What the length of that meeting is gonna be, is it possible to get something brought in for us to munch on a break? Cause we're gonna be here for over figuring 5-6 hours.
Pizza's in the back room, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Can we make a motion to city council to buy pizza for the planning commission?
Roger made the motion.
Pro Tem, what do you think?
their budget,
Can I
Yeah.
ask, has all of these applicants that are gonna be coming before us met all the requirements, background checks, the whole?
So the
before
requirements
we
for the
waste
planning and
time?
zoning have been met. For planning and zoning, they have been met. The background checks aren't through our department. It's more so through the city regarding the marijuana permitting process. They've met all the requirements for the land use, which is what we're concerned about, and the future land use as well. So some haven't taken recommendations to heart. In our opinion, that's something that is a disrespectful thing, but something that needs to be in consideration because, anyway.
Isn't that part of our process? Is we can
Right.
say that
Yes.
it is contingent on you, if you want this
Yes.
special
Yes,
use, that you do the following.
Yep,
Yep.
yes, and that's what we'll be providing you prior to the meeting in the packets. All the information from the pertinent planning documents that are for the city. So your master plan, the park and recreation plan, because we're gonna talk about railroad relocation here and trail development in a minute. The US 31 corridor management plan was put in place by MDOT, and then the US 31 commercial corridor plan, which the planning department worked with the city planning commission and all of the communities up and down the 31 corridor in Manistee County back in 2015-16, so.
Are we
So-
gonna be limited into the amount, the number of businesses that we can recommend?
It's.
For special use permits, there's no limit for that. Regarding the city's stance, it's not determined as to the amount of permits right now.
Right, it is now.
It is now,
It is
yeah.
now.
The
We have a
codified
set-
ordinance is now set to unlimited, correct?
No.
It
not-
is.
not as- No, as far as I know.
Is it still at?
It's on our agenda for next Tuesday.
Yeah, okay, it's next
We're
Tuesday.
amending the ordinance to unlimited.
Yep, okay, that's what I thought I'd read, okay.
But it is not, right now, it is
No,
not.
not right now. But that isn't, the special, you wouldn't be able to utilize the codified ordinance and the limited number of licenses to approve a special use permit, because the special use permit is strictly contingent on the regulations of the zoning ordinance. So as long as they meet that and you're happy with the design, you can approve the special use permits. One thing that we're gonna strongly be recommending though, is that the proposed site plans from the different developers or realtors, whoever they may be, that their approval be contingent on that they build that out. So that you are not approving a special use permit and then they can just go transfer that permit to whoever, like we saw it happen this evening, that they actually have to build it themselves if they're seeking approval. And that's one thing we feel very strong about, so that you are not approving development sites that do not get built. That people are just bankrolling these sites so that they can make money off of them, is basically what they would be utilizing that stance
Well,
for.
they're partnered to buy this other put this other parcel in to hold it, so their business grows.
100%.
How is all that communication, like that, plus signage, plus rain gardens, how are we,
There will be a memo for each individual site. We will have a so we'll
gonna have
we'll
that,
give you, there already are
So
memos.
I've-
Kyle's put all that stuff together already, so.
I've got the
He's been
correspondence.
diligent.
Now, is there gonna be an opportunity for us individually to meet with you before the 15th?
That's
Certainly.
Yeah, we can, not all at the same time, obviously, but
Yeah,
yeah,
because
Yeah,
then it's
we
a
can do
meeting,
three,
but-
we can do up to 3 members at a time.
and we can get that on the calendar as soon as feasible, and I'll send out email after.
And even then, I would, maybe even two.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
I-
two would be
two would
good.
probably be better.
Yeah.
The less issues,
Right.
the,
And then just a reminder, please don't be discussing it in public with residents, with elected officials, with townships, anybody. The Planning and Zoning Enabling Act is very clear. And I know we've been FOIA'd already for the applications and materials for all these special use permits by a couple different law firms downstate. So people are watching what we're doing. And you are a phenomenal planning commission. You do stick to the rules, but I just want to reiterate that we all need to be very, we need to recognize that people are watching what we're doing, and if someone is unhappy with a decision on something and they have the legal means, they could go after us and after the city of Manistee. So we want to make sure that
lawyers go after every angle possible.
Exactly. And there, obviously, there has been no concern with that. No, everything has been to the T, so we just want to keep it that way.
Now, during the meeting, when the applicants come in, will the 9 other applicants be sequestered?
That's an interesting question and point. All the information is public knowledge now in the sense that it's on the city's website. So anyone who is interested in having knowledge of other applicants at this point already have it, because and if they're diligently, following the process, to sequester them, is that to the extent of, for the purpose of answering the similar questions, or I guess, is it to maybe copy answers from other applicants, or what is the?
It could be.
That's a George Saylor question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll contact the city attorney as to the process for that and find a place. There's a lot of places in this building. I'm sure that would be adequate, including the second
I can
floor.
see a lot of copycats coming in for later on, later.
I mean, there's nothing stopping their folks in the audience, grasping the answers, but.
Just to reiterate, the order of operations for the night is the completed accepted applicant in the order of they were completed and accepted.
Right.
So there's proof and records of that we have at the office, including a spreadsheet as to signatures and everything. So everything is binding in that sense. So
you get the timelines then?
yeah.
And everything you'll be presenting is completed?
Everything that night will be completed and submitted, or completed and accepted.
Yeah.
And Mark, you had asked about the timeline for like public speaking. One thing I think is a pretty good idea is before the meeting for public is to address them to set aside community speakers. Spokespersons within the community, and then limiting their time as opposed to giving everybody 3 minutes.
Right.
Have them, and then go to recess to allow them time to put that together, to address some of the concerns. I think it's just gonna be better than giving everybody 3 minutes at a time.
Okay.
I agree.
And also, aren't the concerns supposed to be focused on the special use and not necessarily on the issue of the sale and distribution of marijuana?
Yep, that's correct.
100%.
It should be on each individual site, and maybe even putting a spokesperson to address individual as they come through, like they present, and then we give them recess to get their thoughts together, and then have one spokesperson come forward for the public.
Could we have that put in the agenda then?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are just stipulating the land use at this meeting, nothing to do with sales, like you just said.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any way, and maybe this is an inappropriate question at this time, but a lot of people tonight were kind of complaining about what's going on in their neighborhoods, and is there any way that we can sort of politely curtail that conversation for this purpose? I get it that it's a public hearing, I get that they are coming here to make comments, but that really wasn't what the conversation was about tonight.
Yes, the chair has the authority to ask any speaker to stop. Obviously, I've been in some very contentious meetings in a different community, and we always had a deputy there. We were a county zoning down there. So, and I know that I don't want to be like threatening with having a city police officer here, but people are less prone to be raucous, rowdy, however you want to put it, if there is someone in law enforcement uniform typically there. And that way, if the chair directs that individual to be removed, there is law enforcement. Because if someone would have needed to be removed tonight, who was gonna do it? I mean, I think we could take care of it, but who is really legally supposed to do it, so.
Roger.
I know.
I motion Roger for that.
Yeah, what?
I mean, that's very realistic, because I've been in meetings where there was individuals that made threatening statements to planning commission members, and law enforcement had to step in and physically remove people, and I've seen it happen twice in handcuffs. So it does happen.
This type of hearing,
So,
it could be possible in this type of hearing coming up.
yes, it could be.
We're in the old school, because they were renovating here. And a guy wanted to build something over on Cherry and like 12th, and he was turned down. He took his little cardboard houses and on his little plate thing, and he crushed them up and he threw them at me and said, "That's what you did to my dreams."
Oh,
you know, and all this stuff, you know. And everybody panicked. Well,
That's because you
know,
get people mad at you.
I have that personality, you know.
You guys go away.
But then, you know, they escorted him out and stuff, and then they brought police and they followed me home. I said, "I'm not worried about him," you know, but I can see where you're coming from.
Is there any way that we?
All right, let's move.
I mean, you've made it public knowledge that this is gonna be going on. Is there any way that you can add, like on the Facebook page or on the City of Manistee's page, to, ahead of time, to say, to have a spokesperson and to only keep comments to the
Yeah, I
messages?
think,
Can we
we can
an
make a
announcement of
request,
that?
yeah. Does, Cindy manages the Facebook page. We can make a direct request to her, as well as she manages the website. She could put a statement on there.
Other people on their social media are gonna blow it out of proportion anyway.
Yeah, you can make.
Never happened.
Public hearing, people have the right to.
They're gonna talk, you know.
You know, at least
Yeah.
it's
Already out.
out, right, so that we
Maybe.
have like, how many people tonight? 17?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it.
It's already been posted. Oh.
Oh, I had more than that. I put the list here.
Okay.
All right, let's move along.
Okay.
Let's get this done.
One of them rooms over in the old high school.
All right.
Okay,
Please.
we're moving along. Hey, kids, we're moving along.
Yeah. Yeah, go
Ra-
ahead.
Pizza
railroad-
and salad?
Railroad relocation.
So who's gonna,
You want me to speak on? Okay, let me talk.
I can talk about this, but I was just, regarding your food question, we never answered that. So
Yes, we did. Linda's offered to bring food.
Linda's getting the pizza, right? From Little Caesars? Okay,
What time is your closing?
bring a lunch pail.
When? Make it earlier then.
Bring a sack lunch.
Yeah, 'cause if you send us.
Tell Roger he's gotta bring the six pack.
Don't come back.
What are we coming for?
12 packs.
Got this meat.
Okay, so regarding the rail relocation, there was a meeting the other day between many different entities, including the county and the state senator. CSX was in the room, the three big manufacturers along the lake, PCA, Martin Marietta, and Morton. MDOT was in the room, as well as Pear Marquette and other rail lines, to discuss potentially rerouting the two northern bridges on Manistee Lake to a southern bridge that would still access the three sites and give all the rail service they would need in this area right here on your screens between these two train
What
tracks.
happened to our pointer?
Talking about a bridge?
Did they walk off with our pointer?
No, he left it up on.
Oh, okay.
He was talking about that 30, 40 years ago.
Yep, so it was.
Well, there's already one now.
Well, yeah.
But,
So yeah, 30 years ago.
so right between here, the train track, the bridge would go between here and here, and eliminate all of the track here north around the lake, and about a third of the track would be abandoned to potential redevelopment, like trails, like we're discussing in previous meetings.
They're talking about once you cross Stronach Road, a bridge across to the dead end in PCA.
Right here, yep. And it would go up it would still continue up to this other industry here, which I'm,
Morton Salt?
yep,
Morton's.
yep.
American Materials.
And that's where the turnaround is as well. That's where their roundhouse is.
So this also parcel right here on your screens houses different train cars and things like that as a rail storage yard. That would be eliminated with the bridge being in and put somewhere else on the east side of the lake, potentially near the old, the new industrial area, what was, Renaissance Park. So that being said, this land would be vacated and have potential for a new development. That being said, there's a lot of coastline here and a lot of potential for mixed types of development. So that's on our radar right now. We're putting together a packet out of the planning department that showcases different things from the master plan, showcasing the potential rail relocation benefits, as well as different trail studies and things that showcase how having a four-season multimodal trail would benefit cities and bring a new sense of
Help economic development.
Right, yes. Yeah, because it wouldn't be a movable bridge anymore.
Would
So
they
that's,
would they consider their River Street and Lake Street, how that peninsula, when a train's there, we can be sitting there 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah, that would be eliminated.
Yep, it wouldn't be.
Yeah. The tracks would not go north of Morton.
that's something to consider too with proposing this for different grant opportunities through MDOT has a couple $1 million that go towards closing different rail crossings. So we would close 2 and add 1. Actually, we'd
No,
close.
you wouldn't. You wouldn't have
We
any
technically
railroad
closed
crossings.
3.
Four.
Because there's a Penny Park, 2 on 31. Oh, yeah, and then the one on the
And then the rail
peninsula.
bridge
So
on the
4.
peninsula.
Lake Street, and you have one on River Street.
And you have in the river. Bridge.
And the rail through here goes through Peters Bayou, which would make a great potential to have viewing and sitting areas on the trail for people who are interested in wildlife and things like that.
They can still have the tracks up as far as Sanks Marina in there, because there's no way down that big hill there.
So
They
this
can still store cars down there.
A project of this magnitude takes many variables and moving parts, so to have different support from different entities is a paramount, if you will. So getting the train folks on board as well as the MDOT and different senators is something we're bringing publication to their desks currently. So we're making a document of multitudes of pages of graphics and things that will benefit them talking to decision makers in different areas like Lansing and like, you know, other.
Basically showing that the policy's been laid since 1988, and it's come up in just about every single planning document that's been put together that incorporates the city of Manistee or any of the communities around Manistee Lake.
So to get the studies of how much it would save them by eliminating going around the north side of the lake, as well as the maintenance on the drawbridges and things like that, is something to highly consider, though I don't know where that funding's coming from. I think that would be a benefit for this project moving forward. Regardless, that's the stance and the place it is now. We just wanted to bring it to your attention that this is a piece to the multimodal trails and something to highly consider moving forward, so.
Right, it's still
We
on the
appreciate-
agenda and moving forward. That's what we,
appreciate it, bring it.
that's what we want.
More forward now.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we're done with that. Member discussion, anything, Bob?
Any more?
Shelley?
No, thank you.
Roger?
Well, just let, no.
Marlene?
No?
Got your name, damn it. So,
I make a motion, we,
yeah.
Yeah, let's go home.
The only thing I have is, 900 Vine Street. Is there any updates on that?
Yeah. So they contacted our office on Wednesday and said they'd be ready for reinspection on Monday. They wanted the weekend to start doing all their upgrades to their wall as well as the fan, and invited us to come out and inspect on Monday. Which
It's a different
that's a
site,
different
sorry,
site.
it's a different.
Oh, I'm
they're
sorry.
He's
Yeah.
talking about, he's thinking about the,
smoking area.
he's talking about the home business regarding 900.
Sorry.
But that's the update on the home business.
You got the update on the home business?
For 900 Vine Street.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
For 900 Vine Street, I'll check in with them tomorrow to see their progress and have a report for you on the 15th.
All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
yay.
I want to thank everyone for staying through this marathon meeting.